Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more buckshot patterning, and today we've got a combination that one of you guys requested for us to try out, and it's one that I think we should see some pretty decent results from if history repeats itself with this particular size of buckshot going through this particular setup and choke combo. It's performed well in the past, but what can these particular shells actually give us? And as for those shells I've brought out here today, I got out some of these, the Federal Power-Shok buckshot loads. These ones in particular are the 12 gauge 2 3/4 inch 27 pellet load of 4 buck, moving about 1325 feet per second. And we have tested these 2 3/4 27 pellet 4 buck shells a number of times on the channel, and from what I remember, they have been decent performers. I don't think we've seen anything to write home about, but I don't think we've necessarily seen anything too terrible out of them either. So we definitely have a pretty decent shot at these giving us a pretty nice looking pattern today, at least in thought process. And as for the setup we've got to run them through, I brought out my Mossberg 835 Ulti-Mag here with this choke, which is going to be the interesting part for today. This is a Kicks Gobblin Thunder 680 constriction, which is technically a turkey choke, but if you don't know, these 835s are overboard to a 10 gauge bore size. So even though this is a turkey choke constriction as compared to the 835 bore, with it being a 680, it's roughly your standard 12 gauge extra full type of choke range. And this Gobblin Thunder 680 has shown us multiple good results with 4 buck in the last several times we've tested it. So like I said earlier, if history repeats itself, then it should give us a pretty decent performance with these Power-Shoks as well. We're just gonna have to try it and see. But as for today's test, everything is set up the same as usual. I've got the big sheet of paper at 40 yards. I've got the chronograph so we can get our velocity from the shell, and I've got the templates that we can lay up over our results when we go check those out. So let's get you guys to view this target and see just what the Federal Power-Shok 4 buck loads can do through the 835 and the Kicks 680. It could look really nice. It could be a little disappointing. I don't know exactly what we're going to see yet, but let's take our shot and see what happens. Alright, so that round gave us 1438 through the chrono. The box claim is 1325, so we are a little bit over 100 feet per second above that box claim. Now, from what I remember, we do typically see a little bit above their claim out of these shells, and the overboard barrel can sometimes mess with velocity a little bit. So even though this is moving a little bit quick, it's probably about the correct velocity. And with a 27 pellet load of 4 buck, 1400-ish feet per second, is going to be plenty good enough. So now let's head down to our 40-yard target and see what they gave us as for a pattern. Alright, so now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. And I gotta say, definitely looks pretty decent overall here. We were just a touch low and a touch left on the paper, but I do believe that was probably me more so than the actual combination just shooting low left. Now for reference, the white dot was my point of aim. The paper's 36 inches wide by about 42 or so inches tall. We did have all 27 pellets on the paper, although the wind did rip my paper a little bit over there on the right, but all 27 pellets are circled. Now the overall size of the pattern, including a couple of the flyers, the farthest 2 points across, gave us right at a 27 3/4 inch spread. But you can see we have a 16 3/4 inch number marked there as well, and that is for those circled pellets you see on your screen right there, which does not include any of the flyers. And that middle section or main portion of the pattern is honestly very nice. We do have one little void in it. It's kind of a vertical stripe just off the left edge of that white dot there, but still, most of your load is all right there in about a 16 3/4 inch spread, with a couple of flyers around the edges, which doesn't surprise me considering that these are a plain old unplated lead 4 buck going through a little bit on the tighter side 680 turkey choke. It doesn't really surprise me. But once again, it seems like 4 buck really seems to like that 680-ish constriction range. So let's throw a couple templates up and get a little better reference as to how it looks in some more real life scenarios. Alright, we'll start here with our 10-inch circle, and I did move it to our actual core since we were just a touch low and left, and you can really see that stripe right through the middle of the core I was mentioning a minute ago. But at 40 yards, we had 10 pellets of 4 buck in a 10-inch circle. That one little void in there definitely hurt our numbers a little bit, but still, 10 pellets worth of 4 buck at 1400-ish feet per second, that's not going to feel very good on whatever you're hitting with it. And you can really see we have a couple of flyers around the edges, but everything else is right behind that template there. So I would say not looking too bad there overall, but let's throw some actual animal templates up and see how it would actually look on a hunt. All right, so first up, here's our deer template, and I know not everybody uses 4-buck for deer, but I know there's plenty of you guys that do, so we'll at least take a look at it for those of you that would use this shell on a deer hunt. And as you can very clearly see, 90% of your load is right through the lungs and vitals area right there. I don't think that deer is going to go very far, if anywhere at all, so we really can't argue too much with that. We still have those couple of flyers around the edges, but when you have 20 plus pellets right through the vitals on a deer, they're not going to go anywhere. So I would say more than good enough for a deer hunt, that's for sure. But let's throw the hog template up here as well, which might be a little bit more common of a use for 4-buck, and it'll also give us a little better size reference to something like a coyote as well. And here's that hog template, and it's pretty much the same story. You have 90% of your pellets right through the vitals there. I don't think he's going very far on you. And for you predator hunters, a coyote would be just a touch smaller than this hog template, and you clearly have a plenty good enough of a pattern for those guys as well. I mean, for a predator hunting load, you could easily stretch that pattern out to probably 55 or 60 yards and still have enough pellets in a uniform enough pattern to get the job done. So overall here, I don't think we can really complain too much about that. We saw a couple of flyers around the edges. We had that one void right in the middle of our core, which I would ideally like to see a couple pellets fill in. But when you have 20 plus pellets of 4-buck at 1400-ish feet per second in a 16-inch or so circle down at 40 yards, that's going to absolutely hammer something without a doubt. So once again, it seems like that Kicks 680 just works out pretty well with most 4-buck shells. That's probably the best performance we've seen out of these by a good margin. So can't complain too much about that performance, that's for sure. All right, and here's the wad from that shell. It is kind of one of these shorter, almost half-length wads. It's pretty much like 2 thumb widths tall, so not a full length for a 2 3/4 shell, and it is pretty thin as well. But these wads from Federal seem to do their job in most of their shells. Now, there's nothing stuck down in there, but that Kick 680 did kind of snag up and give us a few tears here in the petals, which is not at all unexpected. It's very common for a Kicks choke in general to do this exact thing to most wads, but the big thing is it doesn't really seem to affect the quality of the pattern too much. Maybe a couple of the flyers might have been caused by it, but overall, I still think it did its job pretty well, all things considered. So nothing out of the ordinary here, that's for sure. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about that performance right there? Definitely a very solid pattern, without a doubt. We can nitpick it a little bit. We did have a couple flyers. We did have that one little stripe through the core area, but ultimately, the overall size and condensed nature of that 4-buck pattern is gonna do some damage downrange, without a doubt. I wouldn't be scared in the slightest to take that combo out after some coyotes, foxes, hogs, whatever, and it's clearly good enough to get the job done on a deer as well, within its respective ranges, since it is a little bit smaller and lighter weight 4-buck pellet. But that Kicks 680 seems to just get the job done with 4-buck shells here the last several times we've tested that combo. And the Power-Shoks really did no different. That's going to absolutely get the job done. So I guess, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these Federal Power-Shok 27 pellet load 4-buck shells? Or have you run any type of buckshot through a Kicks 680? And if so, what kind of results have you seen from them? And would you hunt with that kind of combination? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox, where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it. But I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.